our recording on our website too, and I will share that link out to you so that you can catch anything that you miss as well. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Today's on fundraising. So real quick, can you just, I know we've introduced each other a little bit, but to make sure that I cover what you're after, we'll just go one at a time, just what you're hoping to get out of today's training. So let's go ahead and start with Rachel.
I'm just hoping to learn. I just joined the board and our board president requested that we all come to this. So I'm just getting started and getting trained.
Great. And what about you, Cynthia? What is your purpose of being here today?
Sure. This is probably the hardest position to fill on our board. And I'm not looking for little onesie twosie fundraisers. I'm looking for ideas around major dollars, like to fund an auditorium, for instance. So I didn't know if that's what this was going to cover, but that's what I'm interested in.
So we're going to kind of cover all of the legal requirements of fundraising, and then we'll get into some ideas. We'll kind of brainstorm together those ideas at the end. How about you, Jules? What are you after?
I'm kind of with Cynthia. My goal eventually is to get away from nickel and diming our parents to death with pizza day and this $5 for this and $10 for this. And I would like to do 1 or 2 galas a year, one that covers it all. So I just want to do one massive fundraiser with silent auctions per year. So that's what I'm hoping to learn a little bit about.
Okay, perfect. And was it, I'm going to say it wrong.
Marisa.
Marisa. I knew, I'm like, I'm not going to get this.
Sorry, my name isn't correspond. I'm also looking for kind of big fundraising ideas. We're looking to maybe remodel our middle school building. And so I'm looking for ways to do that.
Okay. And Angela, you just joined us. Can you remind me what school you're with and then kind of what you're hoping to get out of today's training?
Hi, I'm with Merit Preparatory Academy in Springville.
Okay.
And it sounds like I'm in the right place if we're going to do what everybody else is looking for, because I'm in the same boat with everyone else. So big fundraising ideas, and feel the same way about nickeling and diming the parents. You know, anytime you do a fundraiser, it's those parents that belong to the school that contribute. And I'm thinking, how can we reach out a little farther than that?
Farther than that. Okay. So we're going to kind of start off today really looking at the legal requirements of fundraising and the do's and don'ts that we can do in the charter school land that we live in. And then we'll sit and brainstorm together some really good fundraising opportunities. And I'll share what I've heard as working throughout the state with you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me see. There we go. So in Utah, there are some laws and rules and requirements that actually govern fundraising that we have to be very much aware of as we're moving forward. And the first thing is every charter school board needs to have a fundraising policy. And this should really even occur if your school prohibits fundraising. That isn't the case for those of you on the call today. You're all looking at fundraising opportunities, but you need to make sure that you have it very clearly spelled out and that it meets with the requirements on in rule. So to conduct those funds, you have to have that policy that outlines a few specific items. So USV has published a model policy, and we really strongly encourage everybody to look at that model policy and then tweak it and make sure that it makes your own. It should be used as a guide to write your own policy, and I wouldn't just adopt it just straightforward. So I would review it and then make sure that your policy is in compliance with Rule 277-407-10, and that you are then able to have that reflected in your policy.
Bye, love you. Oh, sorry.
Whoops.
Sorry.
There we go. First, it's really important for an LEA to make sure that they know what they can and can't do. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words a little bit today. You are allowed to work with a foundation or a parent group to help support your fundraising. So this could be a PTO or a parent-teacher organization that is actually registered as their own separate 501c3. So a group of so your parent organization isn't under your nonprofit, but they're a separate one. So that would be one example of your foundation or a group of people hoping to provide funds for your school that are outside of it. And then also work with a foundation. We see a lot of school districts have a foundation that will also raise funding for it. When an LEA accepts funds from these outside groups, whether it's a parent group or a foundation, those funds then become public funds, and they have to be treated as our public funds, regardless of their origin. And they become subject to the rules, statutes, and controls regarding any funds that your school receives. So really be aware of that once it comes into your system, you have to use the same accounting that you do for all of your other funds that come in. There are two basic types of fundraisings permitted. There's optional individual fundraising opportunities or group fundraising. So these are outside of money donated to you by a foundation. And the key word here is optional. We can never require an individual to actually go out and fundraise. And we can't require that a group, say your school has a choir, that they fundraise an X amount in order to exist at your school. So that needs to be optional. And when schools schedule group fundraisers, participation logs should be maintained to ensure that the proper allocation of funds is raised. So if you're doing a group fundraising, really make sure that you're keeping track of how those funds were raised and who participated in those fundraisers. And if you have questions, go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask them as we go along. And then we'll also spend some time in Q&A at the end. So can you fundraise to offset the costs of fees? And the exciting answer to that is yes. Fees have really been the hot topic the last couple of years, and we're starting to get into a more regular rhythm with school fees and the requirements with them. So the new laws and rules regarding school fees do allow for fee waivers. So both the school and a foundation may fundraise funds to offset the costs associated with providing a fee waiver, not to eliminate providing the waiver itself. So that's really important as you're moving forward, that the fundraising money is always to offset it. It doesn't get rid of the waiver. You always have to offer a fee waiver if you have fees at your school. Individual fundraising to reduce fees in lieu of waivers cannot be required. So we can't require somebody that would qualify for a fee waiver to then go and fundraise instead of bringing the fees. We still have to waive those fees. We cannot require that they fundraise. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. And then the school may allow optional individual fundraising opportunities for students to raise fees or raise money to offset these fees. So that's really important, especially in your 7th through 12th grade area, where you have lots of organizations and opportunities for students that they can fundraise to still provide those. We just cannot require that they fundraise in lieu of a fee waiver. Fundraising being used towards fees or to offset the cost of fee waivers should be included in the school fees spend plan. Remember that spend plan is required to do as you look at your fee waivers and your fee waiver policies. You also have to bring forward a spend plan. So make sure that any fundraising is also included in that with the anticipated amount that is raised. And then if you are anticipating any donations to cover fees, the donations truly need to be a donation. And a donation is a voluntary gift or contribution made from the generosity, not out of an obligation. So you can't require that every kid bring in a $150 donation for the swim team. It has to be a voluntary contribution and it's on their terms. So a couple things that you cannot do when you're looking at fundraising. The rules clearly state that a school may not authorize, establish, or allow for required individual fundraising. And again, I've hit that a couple times. That's really important. We cannot require individuals to participate in fundraising. And we cannot deny a student membership or participation on a team or group in an activity based on the non-participation of a fundraiser. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So my kids are heavily involved in swim team, and when my oldest, who's graduated from college, but so we're talking 10 years ago, participated on the high school swim team, they required that every student participate in what they called the swim-a-thon. They had to swim 200 laps, and they were required to do that as part of their fundraising thing. And the kids couldn't participate on the swim team unless they participated in this swim-a-thon. Now, and the coaches had lots of reasons for that. They wanted the kids to swim the 200 laps. And so they thought that was really good incentive for them. And they thought when they had them swimming the 200 laps, they could raise some funds as well. But we can't do that anymore. We can't deny them purchase membership on this swim team if they don't participate in the fundraiser. So now what the swim team does is they have a swim day where they swim $200 or swim 200 laps, and then they can fundraise if they want or not want. It does not require any membership onto the swim team. And then let's talk about donations. Donations are great, and we really love donations when they're received according to the law. A donation becomes a fee if a student or parent is required to make the donation as a condition of the student's participation in an activity. So if we have, and we'll just go back to that swim team fee, swim team costs $150. So we're just going to require everybody to have a $150 donation. Now I don't have it as a fee, and I don't have to follow my fee waiver requirements. That's not allowed. It's no longer a donation, it's actually a fee. Your school may not request or accept a donation in lieu of fees unless the activity, class, or program of which the donation is solicited will otherwise be fully funded by the school. And a receipt of the donation will not affect participation by the individual. So you can get donations and apply them to swim team, you just cannot require that. Any action to solicit or accept a donation or contribution must be in compliance with all board policies. Again, anytime you're bringing in funds, it's got to be in compliance with your fundraising policy and your school fees policy, and also your policy on how you're going to handle money that's brought into the school. So when you get a gift of money coming into the school, there are multiple policies that you need to make sure you're in accordance with at your school. And then additionally, an LEA or a school may not accept a donation that would create a significant inequity among the schools within the LEAs. So if you have two campuses and you have this really generous donor that donates $5,000 to the swim team at campus 1, but campus 2 has to raise all their funds to participate in swim team, we now have an inequity. So that money would then have to be split over both LEAs. That we don't have a whole lot of issue with in LEAs and charter world. Most of our schools that have fees usually have just a single campus where we're talking about fees, and that would be their high school campus, as their elementary campuses don't have fees. So just be really aware that those donations are across multiple campuses. So let's look at an example. And every school loves the wrapping paper fundraiser. I'm sure we see that a ton. Probably is gearing up at lots of schools across Utah right now as we move into the holiday season. So we have a choir director. She has heard about the phenomenal funding that can be made through a wrapping paper fundraiser. And so she's going to use that this year, and she's going to have her students sell wrapping paper door to door. The estimate proceeds are 50%. So if every student in the choir sells 10 rolls, they will pay for all of the sheet music for the year. And the choir director plans to tell each student in grades 4 through 6 to go door to door so that the parents only end up having to buy 1 or 2 rolls. So everybody's going to sell 10. If you go door to door, your parents will only have to buy 1 or 2. Hopefully they won't even have to buy any because you sell all 10 rolls going door to door. If the students don't sell anything, they'll still be expected to donate $10. So if they're not going to go door to door and their parents aren't going to buy any wrapping paper, they're going to need to bring in their $10 donation. And if they fail to contribute, they're not going to participate in the Christmas concert. Well, the winter concert, because we're politically correct now. And here's the good news. The person that sells the most gets a solo at that winter concert. So that choir director is already counting in the funds coming in. So can you give me some ideas of where we've gone wrong with our choir director?
So many.
Too many. Just unmute yourself or put in the chat one glaring error our poor choir director has made.
Offering a solo for the highest amount. Can't participate without selling.
Good. So we can't reward them from participation. What else do we have? Okay, there's kind of a couple. First of all, this employee has obviously not cleared this fundraising plan. The choir director did not go to the school director or the board because they would have found that this plan is not going to be in compliance with your fee or fundraising policy. So we've got no communication with our administrator on this because they would clearly know that. And some of the ways we know that they're going to be out of compliance is we cannot require a fundraiser for participation. So we kind of covered that. Elementary students cannot sell items door to door. So that's going to sneak up in those rules that we need to make sure our policies in compliance with this. We can't send elementary kids door to door. We cannot require parents to purchase leftover fundraising materials. And then when we ask and say that each school is going to have to donate $10, that then becomes a fee, not a donation. And then again, tying it to the participation. If you don't participate, you will not be at the concert. So those are some pitfalls we really, really need to avoid. So let's look at another example. This time we're going to move into the high school world and we're going to go to HOSA. HOSA is a club for health Occupational Student Association. So this is where you're going to see lots of your students that want to go into the medical field will join your HOSA club. And they have some really neat opportunities. So let's look at how they're going to handle their funds. ABC Charter High School sponsors a HOSA club, which goes to state competitions each year. And if a student does well, they will also get to go to the national competition. And when my student went, the national competition was in Florida. So we already know that that national competition is going to have a significant expense to it. In preparation for the year, the advisor read the school policy and then met with school leadership. They wanted to ensure that the membership dues, the cost for the state, and the potential cost of the nationals would be included in the school fee spend plan, as well as to present the idea to offer optional individual and school individual fundraising opportunities working at a concession stand at a local sports arena. Students will be given events for which they could sign up for, and the pay would be sent to the school to cover their HOSA related fees. Student membership in HOSA and their ability to participate would not be hindered by the failure to fundraise. Together, the advisor and the administrator worked through the logistics of the plan according with the policy. Okay, so what are some key differences here between our HOSA club and our choir?
They cleared the fees with the school, or they cleared
Okay.
the fundraiser with the school.
So that also means they probably read the policy. What else have they done?
They didn't limit participation based on whether or not they helped fundraise.
Right, it's completely optional. And then they really worked through their school's policy and made sure that they included all of the funds needed for their club in their spend plan. So fundraising in our school fees plans, our school fee waivers, and our school fees, they really work hand in hand, and they need to talk to each other. In that when we look at one, we're also always looking at the other. They go hand in hand. So good job, HOSA. They did a great job. If your school is a 501c3 organization, there are some additional federal rules and regulations when accepting donations and fundraising. So we're going to we have our rules that are set by the State Board of Education, then we have our laws set by this Utah legislator. And then because most of us, in fact, I think all charter schools in Utah are required to be a nonprofit, we also have to follow those nonprofit laws. Then the school board administration need to safeguard this status. So you need to make sure that your fundraising policy is in a line. So for charitable organizations, almost all fundraising activity is permitted as long as the activity is not violating a different rule or law. So most of the time it's permitted, but you just need to always double check and make sure you're not jeopardizing your 501c3 status. If you are a public school, you must coordinate all of the rules and laws and make sure that you're following all of them. And then when in doubt, please just double check with your school's legal representation. I am not a lawyer, so just make sure you're double checking with your state or your school's legal representation on questions about fundraising. And really it comes into play when students are individually optionally raising large sums of money that they're bringing into the school. That's where we see that IRS come into play. I think it's when students are individually raising above $500, then you just need to make sure you're checking with your school legal representation and making sure you're following those rules and guidelines. And then how do we account for funds that come in? Fundraising revenue will be allocated to programs those funds were intended to support. So that goes right back into our program accounting, and we make sure we're utilizing that, as that's been a really big change this year, going from FASB to GASB, making sure that we're really down into the program funds. So using our HOSA example, the money would be receipted following the school's cash receipting policies. Again, remember when we talked about bringing funds in, we have a fundraising policy we have to adhere to. We have our fee waivers and fee policies we have to relate to, and then our accounting policies that we have to follow. So making sure as we're bringing in cash, we're following those rules and regulations set by our school policy. The funds would be assigned to the program code in the chart of accounts, which correspond to local revenue for an extracurricular activity and specifically HOSA, and you can see that on the screen. On occasion, a generic fundraising category may be used, but this is intended when it's not to an associated problem or program, such as a sub for Santa. It is crucial that your business manager know how to properly account for fundraising funds. And as we've discussed previously, once those funds are received by the school, they must be accounted for like all public funds. They can't have different rules. They become part of your school's budget. So how do we really get started with fundraising? Make sure that you assign an employee to be in charge so that all fundraising is coming through one person, and that one person is very competent in the policy and the rules that require fundraising, and that it has been approved by the board. And then really important, you need to make sure that your fundraising policy matches your mission and your vision. Your mission and vision are what make your schools so unique. And as a charter school, and also as part of your charter or your agreement with your authorizer. So fundraising needs to match with that. And then we need to make sure we're processing or creating processes to safeguard our schools. So when it comes down to fundraising, I made notes. Now I just have to find the paper I made the notes on. Oh, sorry about it. It dropped on the floor. We really need to make sure that we're following the policies that we have set, and then making sure we're doing it in meaningful ways to generate revenue for your schools. And over the years, I've heard of schools that have zero fundraising. They just make sure that they completely utilize the funding that has been provided to them by the state and the federal government. And then I've heard of other schools that will raise up to $150,000 to $200,000 in a year. So it really kind of depends where you're hoping to go. Those schools that have raised substantial amounts of money usually have a couple things in common. They're usually raising funds for a specific purpose, whether that's a new building for the middle school, a new roof, a soccer field, to take the HOSA club to Florida for nationals. They have a specific purpose. And as they have a specific purpose for their fundraising, they find it easier to take it out into the community. I've seen the trend lately of having a development director, somebody whose responsibility is to go out and generate funds for the school. Usually this is a volunteer person at the board level, although I have seen a couple schools that have actually hired a development director on a part-time status, making sure that they will bring in more money than to cover their salary and what they would have typically raised through doing fundraising themselves. One trend on fundraising that we've seen in the news the last couple months is the service fundraiser. And I've seen it done by a couple different high schools where the students of the particular club or group are just going out and providing service, and then people are just making donations. Again, those donations are not requirements, so they're making sure that they're true donations, and then the club members are providing service. Seen a lot of success with jogathons and 5Ks. I think those are starting to wind down. I'm not seeing the numbers come in that we saw coming in 5 and 6 years ago on those type of fundraising, but they're really still out there. We see a lot of peer-to-peer fundraising, which those are kind of the ones we classify as the selling of the wrapping paper. Those aren't as successful. I've seen a couple schools do it where they send home a note and say, instead of selling wrapping paper, we're going to just please donate according to, and then they have kind of a checklist. Donate $5 if you were going to buy 2 rolls of wrapping paper, or donate $20 so nobody comes to your door. But they kind of made it humorous as just a way to donate funds instead of having their students sell stuff. And then again, there's some schools that will have some good luck with auctions. And then we're starting to really see a lot of fundraising move into the crowdsourcing realm, where we'll have a GoFundMe account set up to raise money for a playground at a school or for a new soccer field or a very specific thing. And then that is just shared throughout the community. And then the community of students, families share that out just to increase that awareness. So what are some things that you guys have seen success with fundraising at your school?
Hi, Jolene, this is Nyman. I have a question, well, kind of a comment and a question. The comment is that we put in a new playground at our elementary school campus a few years ago, and parents are very generous in donating to that. I guess under these rules, though, that might be a problem because that's something that only one campus would enjoy. Is that correct?
That's a tricky one because it does say that.
Mm-hmm.
My gut, and mind you, that's my gut, not my legal advice, would be that you would still be okay because those funds were also raised by that particular group of parents in a fundraising. I think where you have an inequity of funding between LEA campuses is if a large corporation in your area donated and all of the funds went to only one school.
Gotcha.
Not where you were raising for a specific fund, fundraising purpose. But I don't know, IHC, they have a lot of money because they can build a football stadium in Nevada. So say they decided to give Legacy Prep $100,000 donation. And then that money only went to one school and it was donated to Legacy Prep. Now, if there was a big need for a new roof at campus 2 at Legacy Prep and IHC donated money to fix the roof at that campus, then it's a specific purpose and not create an inequity.
So if you have a parent, for example, that has a specific interest in like one program, let's say they write a check for $10,000 for the elementary school art program, but so that's for a very specific thing, and the junior high school art program wouldn't get that. If the donations are roughly are roughly equal to both campuses, whereas so another donation comes in which is of a more general nature. Would the school be able to say, well, the elementary school got $10,000 for their art program, so we're going to take this donation that is undesignated $10,000 and give it to the junior high, but we're going to buy I don't know, Chromebooks for them instead. Does that kind of even out between the two campuses, even though it's not department to department? Is it sort of the two programs all in all, as long as there's equity?
I think that's the key, is just making sure that there's equity amongst programs,
Gotcha.
that we're not creating a system of haves and have-nots
Uh-huh.
based on donation. So parent X decides to donate $10,000 to the ballroom dance club,
Mhm.
and you have ballroom dance at your elementary school for 3rd and 4th grade, and you have it for 5th and 6th grade at the other school, and you only put that money towards one program, not towards both, then we've created an inequity of programs.
Gotcha.
That's just, I think the really key thing is just to make sure that we don't create an inequity.
Uh-huh.
And our LEAs are typically small enough and not multiple campus. I mean, we have a couple LEAs with multiple campuses that we really don't run across that in charter ruled as often.
Gotcha.
That law is mostly to prevent like Alpine District from putting all of their fundraising funds at Lone Peak and Orem High School never getting anything on the donation realm.
Gotcha.
You mean to make
Okay.
sure that there's equity between the schools.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other things that people are finding really big success with fundraising. I know that Mountainville used to run a 5K, and they did that pretty much as an annual event.
Marisa.
Marisa, I'm like, I've got it written down, but not correctly, so it keeps blowing me. Do you want to share a little bit about that with the group and how you guys had utilized your 5K fundraiser?
We just do a 5K every spring. It includes a breakfast. I would say it's not a huge moneymaker, maybe a couple $1,000s, but it's a fun event to have families come out and support the school. So we sell t-shirts as part of the 5K and then have breakfast after. So
What do you charge for that, Marisa?
I want to say it's, I mean, I could look it up. It's probably 15 for the kids and 25 for the parents. We do, I mean, this counts, I don't know if it's a fundraiser, but our kind of parent organization we provide school lunch that's brought in by outside vendors. And that's kind of one of our school fundraisers that money then goes towards the school. They use it for their activities, but whatever's left, then they donate to the school. So that's been really successful.
Okay. Along with that 5K, again, we've seen a lot of success with jogathons at schools, but those have really come down to what the purpose of raising funds are. Schools that have been very specific, we're going to raise the funds for a new soccer field, have had a much more success than we're just in general raising funds for the school. Lots of schools I've seen will do like an annual gala of some sort, and those are really fun, especially if they line in with your mission and vision to really highlight the amazing things your school's doing. If it's a performing arts school, to do a performing arts gala. Those work well. They are a lot of work, just to throw that out there. And then really just having somebody that's really good at asking for money at your school. And there are different personalities that are really good doing an ask. If they have a very specific reason, then let them go and communicate with people in your community, especially your businesses and your surrounding people. Because lots of times people outside of your school organization are very very committed to making sure that there are strong schools in the area and that there are opportunities. And if they believe in your mission and vision and the specific purpose, they're going to be very generous. There are a lot of people in Utah. It's one of the highest places where people will donate money. So really starting to capitalize in that on the ask. That's important, to not be afraid to have somebody go out and just ask.
You know, I have to ask a quick question.
Uh-huh.
So that is something I have no problem at all doing, which I'm kind of excited about, but I'm tentative right now because of where the world is. I know that companies are hurting. So going out and asking companies to donate when I know that they have had to lay off, they have, you know what I mean? It's like, is that unfounded? I'm just having this moment where I want to go out and do things, but I also need to take into account where we're at in the world.
I think you need to really strategically look at what companies you're asking. If a company you know is just laid off, then that's probably not a great company to do an ask. But Walmart, they're doing phenomenal during this COVID thing. Their bottom line has not really been hurt, and they have a lot of generous grants out there. So I would definitely make sure I did an ask with them. So I would just be really cautious and aware of your community as you go and do the ask, and make sure your asks are appropriate. Like dental offices, medical offices, those asks are just standard asks that you could do, especially if there's a connection with a student at your school. I know my husband's company, they were always willing to do a donation as long as it tied into their mission and vision too. So taking an example of, he works with ancestry.com, and a couple years ago my students marching band went to Pearl Harbor to play there, and they got to play at an interment ceremony for somebody on the USS Utah. And we were able to connect that by saying and asking Ancestry, saying, hey, my kids' grandparents were at Pearl Harbor and they were experiencing it, and so we're wanting to share that experience. And then Ancestry was really generous with their donation because it had that family connection. So really being aware of who you're asking and seeing if your mission and vision and their mission and vision align really does help too in your ask. Other questions? Does anybody have one that they've just been super, super successful with, a fundraiser that they just loved and want to share?
So I'm going to just pipe in again because it was quiet. So one thing that I was doing with my theater department, and now I've moved into the administration, was once a year we would do a restaurant, you know, between 5 and 9, we're doing a fundraiser type thing. And I'm a ferocious marketer when it comes to these events. And I try to warn the restaurants that we're going to shut them down and they need lots of staff, but I think they just never believe me. And then we end up doing it. And my question about this is it reasonable? I'm asking, I guess, everybody here, the board of directors, all of the board of directors that are sitting in here, to have one of those every 2 or 3 weeks, you know? So it's not so much we shut people down, but once a month they can pick and choose. Oh, I don't like Cafe Rio, but I do like Olive Garden, or, you know, or because this once a year thing is, again, we just completely broke the restaurant in the first 45 minutes and then it shut them down for the next 3 hours of waiting. So it's an easy thing where you just mark it and you sit down, and it took no effort on my part. We made $1,000. I thought we could have done better if they would have been better staffed. But what do you think?
So I think on that, timing is really important. You don't want to just have it just once a year, so you're shutting down the organization because all 1,000 families or 1,000 students from your school are showing up at the event. But you don't want it to be so common that people are just like, maybe next time, maybe next time, maybe next time. So I think there's kind of a fine balance, maybe once a term with those, and a variety on that. But there definitely is a sweet spot for your community. I think it's more than once a year. I think it's less than every other week. And really kind of figuring out what that is. You might poll a couple people at your school, like on your PTO or your parent organization, kind of what they think, how often they would participate. Do a little bit of research with your families that you know will always go to those events, that what is too much on their bottom line too. Like my family, we're not going to eat out every 2 weeks. they're going to have to eat my mac and cheese and tuna casserole a little bit. So, you know, kind of see what that is, and just do some research in your community of families. And that's going to be different across the state based on your geographical location. And whether you're offering Chick-fil-A or Cafe Rio, or what they're kind of where they're at, or if you're at a Texas Roadhouse, they might do a Chick-fil-A or not a Texas Roadhouse, or they might do the other. So you're really just gonna have to fine tune that to your community and do some research with the key parents at your school that you know will participate in that, to find that sweet spot. Okay. This is your chance to ask any questions. So go ahead and unmute yourself or stick them in the chat, and I'll answer them. Before I get to that though, I just really want to wrap up that fundraising is super important to schools, and it can be a great avenue to sustain and build, or not sustain, but to have fun programs. Remember, fundraising is like the frosting on your cake though. It cannot be what your whole school is budget is based on. It's just the frosting. It allows for a few extra things. Your budget needs to be able to sustain all of your school activities within itself. So remember, fundraising is always the frosting. It's something additional. It's something we shouldn't count on. And then making sure all of our fundraising is done in accordance with fundraising policies that your board has approved, that are meeting the requirements of the state, that they also are meeting any fee waiver or fee policies, and that your spend plans are in line with your fundraising, and that you're also using your financial policies and how that funding is accounted for. It's really important that in fundraising we tap all three sources of policy on that to make sure we're moving forward. So that's my real quick, make sure you're following the laws and not jeopardizing your school through your fundraising. Now we'll go to some more questions on fundraising opportunities. So has anyone done a big gala per year, and how successful was it? So the school I know that has the most, I shouldn't say the most success, but that does do a big gala is Wasatch Waldorf. They do one every year, and they really work on that fundraising to bring in the icing on the cake. I do not remember how much they raised on that last year. My guess is it was probably in the 5,000 to 10,000 kind of area for that fundraiser. Is there anybody here that's done a big gala?
We used to do it at Mountainville, but it ended up being not cost effective for the amount of work that we had to put into it.
And that's the tricky thing with the amount of work. So if you wanted to do a gala, I would probably just holler over at Wasatch Waldorf and see kind of how they do that. That might be a good one. If you're looking, a silent auction. I believe Roots Academy does a silent auction every year that they find pretty successful. Again, silent auctions are probably in that 1,000 to 5,000. Kind of depends what items you're able to get donations for on that. So if I was looking at a gala, I might give Wasatch Waldorf a call. A silent auction, I'd probably talk over with Tyler at Roots. If you're going to do a jogathon, I saw that Soldier Hollow had a great success with one of those. And then some of our Park City schools do just a really good job with doing a development drive where they're just calling people and asking for donations. And they've had quite a bit of success with that, both at Winter Sports School and, oh no, I just lost the name of this school. Wyoming Academy. They've both had some good success there. Just trying to highlight a couple schools I know that have done a good job with fundraising. Other questions?
Has anyone done a huge fundraise where you're trying to do an addition or build an auditorium? Has anyone done that, and what have you done?
Nyman, we did, of course, we did one for a playground, which was several $100,000, I want to say, but the donations, I mean, will you maybe explain to them a little bit how that worked and what we got through parent donation type thing?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how much we got, and it was a little bit disorganized, to tell you the truth. We had one of our school founders who was still active here. She's not with the school now, but they put together an independent little group called Friends of Legacy, their own little nonprofit, where they accepted money and controlled it, and they would give it to the school for projects they thought were really good. That met with a little bit of resistance in that parents were reluctant to give to this other organization because they felt that there was no guarantee it would come exactly to the school. So that was interesting. A lot of those donations that came in sort of piecemeal. Some came to the school, some came to the Friends of Legacy, but it was not particularly well organized. I was surprised we got as much as we did, and I don't recall exactly how much we got.
Okay, so it sounds like a couple things we can look at. If you're going to do some fundraising for a really big project, I think you might want to look at possibly working with the foundation or providing that in-house. I think the key to that, though, is making sure that the person is over those funds, is very organized and has a plan and is following all the rules and regulations required with fundraising. So I think if you're going to raise a lot of funds for a specific thing, make sure you identify a key person to be in charge of that. Have them outline their process of what they're going to do. So if you're going to be working for an auditorium, kind of the steps is to identify who at your school is going to be over that, the timeline that you want to raise that amount of funding. Oftentimes an auditorium might take 2 or 3 years, and you might break it down. The first year we're going to do the shell, then we're going to do lights, then we're going to do the curtains, or break that down so that there are benchmarks so that those that are donating can see where it's going and that it can be implemented faster than just all at once at the end, if you can build it kind of in pieces. Knowing that it's going to take a couple really big pushes, and some good pushes could be your 5Ks, your galas, a really good crowdsourcing drive, and then kind of have them hit Google and see what's working really well. And utilize that Google on fundraising. If you just type in fundraising, you're going to get a whole list of things. And then hopefully that person can then take it to the community as well and meet with different like-minded companies. If you're going with an auditorium where you could do drama, you might want to check in with some of the different drama organizations throughout the state and see how they've done it and if they would be willing to help participate in your funding too, or people that are regular donors for them may become a donor for you as well if you can build that relationship. So I think the key to a really large fundraiser is to have someone that's over it, have them really systematically line up how they're going to do it, and then just start working through that plan. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and it's really possible. There are schools that have been able to raise large amounts of funds every year, but they have somebody that's heading that up and that's really charismatic, and that is their drive. I should never be the head fundraiser. I'm very organized, but asking for money is not my favorite thing. So I'm always like, well, if you could, please. That's not the personality you want. You really want somebody that can come out and sell your school and say, hey, our school needs some funds. Can you donate X amount for this purpose in your ask? And then create some opportunities for them to participate through your school. I just thought of one more thing that's out there as you're asking businesses to, it's really appropriate to say, you know, we can put some signage up at our school just to celebrate you. I know like Lakeview Academy, all of their big company donors have a banner on the fence in front of their school. So everybody in the community can see who's giving to the school. And that helps to create more donors for a school, because they see it as a partnership. Okay, well, I was just great to hang out with you guys today at lunch. This will be has been recorded, and we will go ahead and stick that up on our website for you. I did send the PowerPoint out to all those that were currently registered before the meeting started. Anybody that's joined since then, I think I've got you down, and we'll just send that out. If you do not get a copy of the slide deck and would like it, just shoot me an email and I will get that to you. Otherwise, have a great week. Enjoy November.